Hello, everybody. My name is Kitty, and I'll be your host for today's Etcher Live demo. We are here with the fabulous Cassy, who's going to be giving you a little introduction to the course on acrylic that she's going to be doing for us. And today she's going to be teaching us how to paint a watermelon slice. And we're going to tell you all about the class and the course. It's a number of classes. And that way you will know what's coming up. So if you have any questions for Cassy, please put them in the chat in all capital letters so that I can see them better. And if they're relevant to what she's doing at the time, I will ask then. If not, I'm going to hold off some of those questions until the end when we do our question and answer session. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Cassy, who will tell us more about what we're doing today. Cassy, it's all you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Cassy, or Cassydraws, whatever. And I'm an acrylic painter. I do artwork full time, and I paint normally wildlife, landscapes, and nature. I'm going to be doing an introduction to acrylic course starting on Saturday. So that's super exciting. I'm very happy to see acrylic on the Etcher platform. Yay! And we're going to have a lot of fun. And I'm going to give you a little slice of what we're going to be doing on Saturday. We're going to paint a watermelon slice today. And yeah, we're just going to have some fun. I'm going to lead you through it. Any questions, by all means, drop them in the chat. And yeah, we're just going to have some fun. Use acrylic if you want to follow along. I'll kind of let you know what materials I'm using, what steps I'm on, and you can follow along or paint in the medium of your choice and just hang out and have a blast. So thank you for having me.
We are happy to have you here.
Perfect. So I guess we're ready to just jump right in. All right, perfect. Let me switch my camera over and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so we have, and I'll lead you through what we've got here today. I have my canvas panel, I like to call it, or my illustration board that I'm going to be using. You can use canvas, you can use acrylic pad, which is very similar to like a cardstock type sheet of paper. Whatever you want to follow along today, you are more than welcome to. I just choose this because for little studies or demonstrations, it's not the full cost of a canvas. It's much more inexpensive. So this is the route. With the price of things nowadays, we like to keep it inexpensive. So that's what I'm using here today. And then I also have, for holding our paint, I have our Borden and Riley palette paper. I use this for a lot of my work. I like the way that it feels. I like the mixing sort of properties that it has. It's very smooth, very similar to what would be a glass palette. So, or even like a plastic wrap. You'll see some artists cover something with plastic wrap. I definitely love the feel of this disposable palette paper. So that's what I'm going to be using to put our paints on. Of course, I have our little water container. Mine is very well loved, so please ignore how ugly it is. And then I have some paper towel, and of course our brushes. Now brushes, you can use whatever you prefer, whatever you have in your kit really, whether it's a value pack or you've picked up some brushes and made your own kit, you are more than welcome to use whatever. My favorites are the Grumbacher Golden Edge brushes. These are great for mixed media as well. So my watercolorists out there, a fantastic option for your watercolors too. And then I have a few of these Princetons, which I actually picked up from Michael's, surprisingly enough, 60% off. They were on sale. So I said, let's grab a few. Fell in love with the blenders. And then I have a few of their nice, shiny new filberts as well. So whatever you prefer, you can go ahead and just use any shape or size. We'll get into that more in the course as well, of when to use certain shapes and sizes, what works best for what. But for now, we're just going to have some fun, splash some paint around, and go ahead and get started. So let's put our paint on our palette paper. Now I will ask too, my lovely Etcher fam. Oops. I can hear myself. Is the comments, will they come up in the StreamYard chat as well, or do I have to have the YouTube open?
You'd have to have the YouTube open, but
okay.
If you don't want to keep an eye on it, I'll just ask you as they come up.
Okay, not a problem. I just wasn't sure. I'm still very new to how this works, so there we go. I've got it open now. Hello. Perfect. If I felt weird without it, my streamer side was like something.
I know what you mean.
Something is off here. So perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to get my colors out here that we need for this lovely watermelon. I'm just going to throw these on there. If you have any questions so far, let me know. We need a little bit of blue for that rind. Let's throw in some mixing as well. We will need some Mars Black. Perfect. Hello, everyone. B, Mr. Jesso, good to see you guys. There's some names I recognize, so welcome. All right.
Cassy?
Yes.
Let's can you jostle around some of the things on your screen right now because the focus keeps bouncing.
Sure.
To figure out where it is.
Yeah, no problem. This webcam is just giving us a hard time today. Let me zoom out a little
backing
bit.
Up a little bit will help.
Yes. Sometimes they are just, technology is great when it works. That's what I always say, right?
Oh, that's
all right. Is that better? I think it was a little too zoomed in, so that's my fault.
It's fine.
All right. With acrylic, I'm using the Grumbacher Academy acrylic. This is a student grade brand and line of paint. So we're not using anything super duper professional. I get a lot of questions about that of, do I need professional grade acrylics? Can I get away with like the Grumbachers or the Winsor & Newtons, like student grade? You absolutely can. No worries there. I say use whatever you have available. So we're gonna drop in about a quarter size of these paints. Gonna do a little bit of blue since I don't need too much. So we've dropped in red, blue. Going to add in, look at this yellow. It is very well loved. Dropping in some yellow as well. Perfect.
Do you find that there are some colors that you use a lot more than others in your work?
Absolutely. Yes. I am constantly bugging Grumbacher and Chart Pack, my lovely sponsors for my paints. I'm constantly bothering them. Can you please send me white? Can you please send me yellow? Thank you. Especially with a lot of like landscapes, you're working with a lot of green, pet portraits, a lot of brown, natural tones. My sepia, my burnt sienna, as I say, is constantly out. And they're like, again? An email again? Yes. So definitely you will notice certain shades and colors go way faster for sure.
Great. I always think that white should just come in a giant tub.
Yes, I'm sure you can. This is the largest ones that Grumbacher, to my knowledge, has available. And these are the 150 mil. I will go through one of these easily every month, probably every couple of months. And depending on the size you're working on as well, today we're working much smaller, but for anyone who does a very large style painting on large canvas with an easel, you're going to burn through these quite fast. Now, a little something too, mixing white is not a necessity. I do like to add mixing white to my palette because it's nice to bulk up colors we're going to use a lot of. And this actually ties in a little segue, if you will, to saving our paint or our paint costs and how much we use. With the mixing white, you can actually add in to your, let's say, red for the base of the watermelon and get a lot more out of your paint than if you were to just use this quarter sort of dollop of red onto your palette. So it is a good saver. It really kind of bulks up the amount. And just a little side note, something you can add to your palette or your kit later on. All right, so this is what we have. Now, hopefully you guys can see this again. I apologize, my webcam is just being not nice today. But we have our red, we have our white, which is going to be the base of this watermelon, a little bit of yellow for some little punch here and there. We have our blue and our black and our mixing. So if you're following along, those are going to be the colors that you will need today. All right, let's move this stuff out of the way. And you'll learn with acrylic, there is a little bit more of a mess. I find my desk is never big enough. So I'm always trying to find and maneuver for more room. And I'll try to keep my palette paper in view as well so you guys can see the color mixing that I'm doing. How's the focus? How are we doing?
I think it's fine right now. It's going to settle out once something is actually on the paper.
On the paper, yes. Let's just take care of that now, shall we? let's just get that out of the way. All right, so we're going to go ahead and paint this watermelon slice. So I like to start with a base sketch. Some artists will prefer to just go ahead and start painting. You are more than welcome to do that. I just like a little bit of a base. So for today, and let me know if I ever go out of focus. For today, let's go ahead and start with this shape. So I'm just going to go ahead. Now you can do a slice, you can do the whole fruit, whatever you prefer. That is totally up to you. So I'm just going to go ahead and start blocking this in. Now what I like to do is I like to get my big shape in first. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and kind of just lightly block in the details. We don't need to go anything crazy. This is not a finished illustration or graphite drawing. We just want a nice base so that as we're painting, we remember where the parts of the watermelon are. So the really juicy bits that are the most delicious, leading up to that rind where, you know, we always toss those, give them to somebody else, the garbage, where those kind of start and stop. So I'm just going to go in and kind of lightly block in. Nothing too crazy, but just as a guide. You can see I'm being very, very loose with this. How are we doing? We doing all right, everyone? Any questions so far? I'm going to be hungry after this class. Me too. Absolutely. I'll give you a moment just to get your sketch done.
Everyone's mouths are going to be watering.
Oh, I know. I'm looking at this picture and I taste summertime. All right. I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't think they're quite in season yet, but I'm like, who cares? All right. So I'm going to go ahead. And we all know that watermelon kind of gets this little, almost like I'll call them soft, soggy bits. The really kind of sunken in parts. So I'm going to kind of block these in. Their positioning doesn't have to be perfect. Again, with these kinds of paintings, we can kind of have a lot of freedom with this. We don't need anything too wild or crazy, but I just want to remember where these parts are going to go. Hi, Bev. Good to see you. Thank you all so much for joining today. And Etcher, thank you for having me. I'm so blessed to be here.
We are so happy to have you. It's always a pleasure.
Bless. Thank you. You guys are wonderful. All right, so we've got a little bit of this rind here. So I've blocked that in as well, where that real nice green starts to come in. It's going to be from this angle, very, very thin, but I just wanted to add that in anyways. So we've got our nice rind. We've got these sort of chunky part no one likes, and then the real juicy, delicious part. So I think that's a pretty good base for a sketch. I'd like to go ahead now and block in some of our base layers. Now, we'll talk about this further in the class. We'll pretty much every week be reiterating this and covering this, but with acrylic, we're going to work from back to front, from dark to light. Now, everyone is different. I always preface all of my videos, every time I stream, every time I'm doing artwork anywhere online, you are in control as the artist. So I can give you advice, I can show you my process, but everyone is different. So don't feel as though that's the only way you have to paint. You can paint however you prefer. But I found through my couple years now of painting experience that for me, dark to light, back to front works best. So on this watermelon, I'm going to find the furthest back layer I can and paint that in first. So let's start with a really nice base red. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to dunk it into my water container. Now my watercolorists are like, okay, like I'm feeling this. Acrylic's not too different. It's not bad. We're going to basically dunk our brush in until it's got a really sort of nice, like wet consistency, not sopping wet where we're dripping all over our paint and our palettes, but just enough that we can mix quite nicely. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dunk into my red, since that's going to be my base color. And I'll try to mix it where you guys can see. I'm just going to kind of, I call it smash. I'm going to smash this red around a little on my palette just to get it off my brush bristles and really kind of make a nice base or consistency. From there, I know that I don't need a really bright red. Right now, I need just a nice base. So I'm going to go in and add in a little bit of white. You can see I don't have too much on my brush there. And I'm going to go ahead and mix. And right around, you know, once all this paint is joined together, you'll see it's kind of right around this really nice, soft watermelon color. It's a really beautiful, soft, pinky red. All right. Now, if you feel you need it a little bit lighter, we can go ahead and add in a little bit more white. White is a very soft color in acrylics, so usually the other colors will overpower it. So you might find, this is why we use a lot of white paint, as we were talking about. It is very, very soft, and you will find that you use quite a bit. Now, I think that's good. I've kind of added in a little bit of white about 2 or 3 times, and I think I'm ready to go ahead and add this to our painting. So let's go ahead and get this. Oh, delicious. Let's get this base down. And I'm going to go right to the edge where I put that little kind of squiggly lines for the chompy bits. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover over this. Now, depending on your sketch, the darkness of your pencil, you will notice that mine still shines through. And this can be a good thing, but it also can be a frustrating thing. It might not show very well on the camera, but it's still there. So we're going to have to do a couple layers so that we don't see our pencil marks. That's a nice red, right? It's summer. It screams summertime to me. And for the purpose of this demo, I would say I'm not too worried about my sketch shining through. I'm more concerned about getting my color mixing down. That's going to be a big section of the course that we're going to talk about, is color mixing, how to get this color, not this one specifically, but the colors that you're looking for. As that for me is half the battle with acrylic, is really just trying to get a proper mix and match a reference to your painting, if that makes sense. So that's a good base, I would say. How are we feeling about this so far? Everyone doing okay? Any questions? That color, right? I can almost feel every stroke you're doing. It looks so smooth. Well, thank you. That is one thing I will say about acrylic, is it is a very smooth medium. Again, it's kind of like a gouache, a little bit more on the glossy side, but on this illustration board or a canvas panel, it does dry very, very matte and very smooth. So I'm a fan. I'm a little biased, but I think it's fantastic. I always say that. I'm like, well, I love it. Hopefully you guys will too. Now with acrylic, speaking of this, the dry time. We will talk about that, of course, as well. But the dry time for this, the middle of my watermelon here is pretty much dry already. So the more paint that you have, obviously, the longer this is going to take to dry. But usually if you give it a couple minutes, this is already dried matte. I can see a little few areas on here that are a little tacky. When acrylic dries, it gets a little sticky and then it goes matte or gloss. So when you know it's still a little tacky, give it 30 more seconds, and then it should be completely dry.
Cassie,
So, yes,
talking about the drying.
sure.
So is there a difference in how quickly it dries when you use it on like a canvas pad like that, as opposed to like canvas?
Yes, great question. I find personally the canvas pad or illustration board dries, honestly, 50% faster. It's actually amazing to me how fast it dries. And I think because it's still a paper product, the paper will soak up those pigments. It will soak up the paint a lot faster. Whereas on canvas, especially if it's a unprimed, like not gessoed canvas straight off the shelf, from Michael's, you can get the pre-done canvas. I find that it kind of slips around a lot more before it finally settles. Yes. So very great question. If you like the fast drying matte feel, I would definitely say illustration board, try it, see how you feel. And if you're more of I want to do an upright painting on an easel, I want something that's a little bit slower, definitely canvas would be my recommendation for sure.
How thick is that board that you're using?
Yeah, perfect example, and excellent question. So hopefully I can lift it up for you guys here. Actually, let's just snap it off. Let's just do that. So these come very much like a watercolor block. Hopefully you guys can see this.
Oh yeah.
It's got this sort of like glue edge. And I'll put my paintbrush down for a moment. And I'm basically, you'll hear it, just going to snap that off. And then it's just one single sheet. So I'm terrible at fractions and measurements, so I'll just show you. But
Oh, wow, that's pretty thick.
yes, much thicker than, let's say, an acrylic sheet in a block, or sorry, watercolor in a block. And it's really nice. These are excellent to frame. So I find sometimes when you frame, let's say, a canvas, they're way too thick.
Mm.
And then other times, you know, the watercolor sheets are very kind of thin. So this is kind of a nice in between thickness for sure. Wood panels, yes, wood panels are fantastic as well. An excellent option to try. Their finish is really beautiful too. All right, let's go ahead and we are going to mix this lovely rind green color. So when you're done painting with your red and you're feeling happy about those layers, you're going to essentially dunk your paintbrush into your water container and use the side. So this is something we talk about in the course as well as brush care, but you're going to use the side of your container and wash your brush like this. And the reason being is if I were to dunk my brush far down into my bin, you're going to pick up all of the sediment and debris and particles of the paint that acrylic produces. It's going to settle down in the bottom. And when you smash your brush down like this, although it cleans the brush quite nicely, you're actually spreading the bristles and allowing all of that gunk to go up into the brush. And this is where you'll start to see your brush get some wayward hairs. You know, those brushes that look like this? You know, you kind of get one of those, which are great for techniques of, you know, stippling or clouds or wispiness. Those all have their purpose. But if you've just spent $20 on a brush, probably not something that you want to see is your brush looking that way. So I definitely say use the side of the container, do a few quick turns and swishes, and you're good to go. Acrylic is very forgiving that way with your you know, your brush and your color mixing. You'll kind of cover over any leftovers anyway. So you're good to go. So let's wet our brush again. And then what we're going to do is, and I'm going to do this for you guys since I know my camera is just being a turkey. I had this all set up and without fail, there's always got to be something, right? There's always something that goes wrong. We're going to dunk into the white and take a little bit off on the side. So anytime I'm mixing a new color, I like to just pick them up and kind of throw them somewhere else on the palette and mix elsewhere. I'm trying not to contaminate these colors. I want them to be as pure as possible. So I'm moving the mixing colors away from those quarter-sized dollops. I'm just kind of moving it away and mixing elsewhere. So I want to make the rind. So I want to do a little bit of a blue. Blue is very overpowering with acrylic. You can see already just that little bit of amount has made this really beautiful robin egg sky blue. But we want to make sure we don't do too much. And I'm going to add in much more yellow. And you can see it's still a little bit on the soft blue side. So I'm going to add in just a touch more until we get the right mix. Now with acrylic, fret not. Acrylic mixing to this day, I still have problems and I've been painting for 5 to 6 years. So it is something that you will struggle with. It is something that will frustrate you. People have come to me and said, Cassie, I hate acrylic. Color mixing sucks. You will go through that process. Trust me. Okay. It's a growing pain, but once you get through it, you'll be fine. Who's had problems color mixing? Say me in chat. Me. Everyone should be saying me right now.
And it's so different medium to medium. You find that each one has their own challenges, and trying not to compare them is difficult.
Absolutely. Like, how do you feel about watercolor color mixing? Like, do you find it much easier than acrylic, or I'm just defaulting to watercolor?
I do.
So you do find it more difficult?
No, well, actually, I find watercolor to be easier.
Easier. Okay.
I think it all has to do with how well you know your paints.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Me. I love all the me's.
Yeah, like Oh, here's actually a good question, Cassie.
Sure.
How do you feel about mixing colors with a palette knife?
Oh.
Apparently, it's better for your brushes.
Yes.
Being said.
So I personally do not use a palette knife, and I'm probably a terrible teacher for saying this, but I use my brushes, even though I know you're not supposed to smash them in and mix your
Mm,
colors this way. It's just something I can't break. Um, I do not use a palette knife. I find them to be a little clunky, and maybe I'm
mm,
doing it wrong. So that could definitely be a user error. But for me, I just don't find them to be as quick, especially with the acrylic dry time. We're always battling the dry
yeah.
time, right? So for me to pick up a palette knife, mix my, and this is no offense to my palette knife users in the chat watching this recording, y'all keep doing you. That is, if it works for you, please continue. But for me, it's too clunky. I forget half the time, and I just don't mix enough paint to really utilize it the way it should be. I maybe paint up to a 14 by 18 canvas. Otherwise, I paint very small. So for
Mm.
me to use a palette knife on that little amount of paint just doesn't seem to make sense for me. So I say, if you're worried about your brushes, let's say you bought a brush that was $30 and this was your pride and joy. Don't use it to mix your paints. Go and get a value pack brand of these, square brushes. Sometimes the ferrule pops right off and you're like, oh, that was a waste. Use those little guys to mix your paint. So if they break, you don't really care. You've got 20 more of them, rather than your good ones that you're going to be using for the next 5-10 years. So that would be my recommendation. If the palette knife doesn't work for you, use a cheapy throwaway brush. Makeup brushes, don't sleep on makeup brushes. You can get some really good cheap makeup brushes, let's say from the dollar store or the clearance section in a makeup store. They will work for paints. They actually are excellent blender brushes. They're actually excellent powder brushes, great for detailing like stars in a background or doing a nice ombre background. So those also work too. So you can get a cheap pack of those and use those as well. But excellent question for sure. All right, so to get us caught up, because I'm a chatty Cathy, I've mixed this really nice mint green. So I've added in white, I've added in a touch of blue and a little bit more yellow, and I've made this beautiful mint color. So my brush is all loaded up with this, and I'm going to go ahead and start painting in the chunky bits of the watermelon rind. So I'm just going to go ahead and start blocking that in. And you're going to see a really beautiful, beautiful contrast between the watermelon slice, the juicy bit, and this part here. So it's very, very mint. And we're going to add in later on in our other layers, we're going to add in much more white as well. But this is a good foundation to start. And you're going to change these colors to fit you. So depending on your reference, you might find that it's a little bit more on the green side. You might find that it's a little bit more lighter. I say just do exactly as you see in the reference and what works for you. I'm no Bob Ross. I feel that in my core. The man was an absolute legend and an excellent, excellent painter. All right, we're just going to drop this in. And you can see already that we're getting a nice base. That's exactly how acrylic works, is we're going to go ahead and get this really nice first layer, and then we're going to build from there. Now, is anyone here today actually following along with acrylic today, or are we kind of just watching, working with watercolor? Do we have acrylic artists in chat today?
I saw a couple people say that this isn't the first time that they've done it.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. I love to see it. Love to see it. So what I'm doing here is every time, if you feel as though your paint is drying on your palette paper a little bit too quickly, or maybe you just need a little bit more, you can go in and add this mixing white to the color, and it'll actually lift off the pigment from the previous color before, kind of very similar to reactivating watercolor. Now, if it's dry, you're out of luck. But if it is still a little tacky and still sort of pliable, you can add in the mixing white and actually pick up this color and kind of rejuvenate it a little bit. So that's just what I'm doing to this minty green. I've added some mixing white, and I'm going to go ahead and add that in as a sort of layer 1.5. We're not quite doing a second layer yet, but I do want to lighten up some areas here. Paint with mostly acrylic. Nice. Excellent, Linda. That's fantastic. What do you like to paint? I have the pencil sketch, no acrylics though. Oh, may try the gouache later. I would love to see, B. I am a huge fan of your work. I think you're an absolute gem, so I would love to see it. All right. And you can see here too that I'm not being perfect with this. I am just going ahead and kind of dabbing this color all over wherever I feel that it needs to be. I'm not being smooth with this. I call it punching. I'm punching my canvas or my acrylic paper, and I'm just kind of plotting this in. Nothing crazy. Acrylic is very forgiving. So if you feel you've gone a little wayward or above your sketch or you're not really happy with it, just go over it. All right. So I think this is pretty well done so far. Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and wash off our brush. So I'm done using this green for now. I basically want to cleanse my brush. So I'm just going into my little bin here of water and using the side of the container to clean my brush.
Linda says that she does landscapes and animals and a little bit of everything.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. I love that, sort of wide variety. It keeps things fresh and exciting. Sometimes when we paint the same similar things, we can get a little stale, or maybe when the art block starts to creep up a little. So I love to hear that you're doing a little bit of everything.
Oh, here's a question.
Sure.
I hope I'm saying this correctly. Isai says, sometimes we're tempted to use water to help prolong the drying, but the reverse often happens. Do you use any anti-drying mediums or just mix in small batches?
That is an excellent question. Every artist is different. I will always preface this with the advice that I give. Everyone is different. I personally have never used a drying medium. I've only ever used acrylic as is out of the tube. So I prefer to mix in smaller batches. It also inadvertently strengthens your color matching and your color mixing because you're doing it so often. And to match this pink that we use, for example, to go back onto your palette paper and try to mix that again, it is a challenge. And so I found that actually strengthened my use of acrylic is mixing smaller batches and working on that color mixing. You can also use a stay wet palette. So a lot of artists, if they're doing a large painting and they mix a large batch of, let's say, a brown for a lion portrait, they can use a stay wet palette that actually has a sponge in it that will try and keep the acrylic wet or moist for as long as possible. Still pliable. It's not the same feel out of the tube, of course, but it's always an option if you're working in large, quantities of paint. But I definitely say, in my opinion, mix smaller batches will not only save you money, it will also save you a lot of, frustration of, oh, this dried overnight, or, the anti-drying medium doesn't dry as slowly as you'd like. And it's an extra step, right, that you have to worry about of adding that in or, etc. So that's just my opinion and kind of what I found works for me. But I always say explore your options and see what works for you. All right, so I would say, give or take a few little spots here, this is a pretty well dried first layer. So when you're working with acrylic, this is kind of what you're looking for your first few layers. So I would say we've done a job well done. I can go ahead and add in another pink on top if I wanted to. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the shadows of this watermelon. So we've done our base layers. We still have a rough idea of where everything is. We've blocked that all in. Now we want to go ahead and work from dark to light, back to front. So I'm going to pick the darkest sections of this. I'm going to work on the red first. I'm going to pick the darkest sections of this red that I can find in my reference. So look at your watermelon slice, find the really dark areas, and we're going to block those in now. I like to use, I was using, by the way, for the base, a medium-sized filbert. I'm going to switch over to my pride and joy, my size 12 Princeton blender. Now, blender brushes work excellent for everything, whether it is a sky, whether it is grass, glazing, which you're going to talk about in the course as well. We'll touch on that a little bit further here, but this has been my go-to brush for getting a really soft, seamless blend with acrylic. Acrylic is very hard to blend naturally and for it to look smooth and kind of got that really nice finish. So this has been the trick for me. I encourage you to check out a blender brush. Again, doesn't matter the brand, but just keep that in mind for your toolkit. If you pick up acrylic and you really like it, this may be an investment for you to add to your kit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dunk into my red. We know that's going to be a big bit of my base. It's a large portion of it. I'm going to go ahead and drop this red. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in just a touch of white. I don't want to add as much as I did last time. I want this to be darker than my original base color. So I'm going to go ahead, add some water to add a little bit more volume to this color mix. And then what I'm going to do, surprisingly, is add in a little bit of black. Very, very, very subtle with this because black is a very overpowering color in acrylic, and it will definitely cover over your color mixing if you add too much. So I'm just going ahead. Yes.
We have a good question in the
Sure.
chat. Is a blender brush the same as a mop brush?
So the blender brushes are much more stiff. They are a lot shorter. So usually the mop brushes, or at least the ones that I've used in the past and that I've seen, are a lot more, I find, loose. I know a lot of my watercolorists, you guys may use mops for your backgrounds, correct? I'm assuming. I'm not a watercolor professional, but I know a lot of times people will use them for large backgrounds or large amounts of water. Whereas the blenders, I don't know if you can see this or not, but they're very short, stubby hairs and they're much coarser. So this is usually very thick. And they're kind of cut in a way where it's very tapered. The bottom or the part closest to the metal ferrule is going to be the longest kind of outwards, and then there's kind of long and short stubby hairs in the middle. So it almost looks like a bad haircut. Okay, it looks like a bad haircut. This thing went through the wood chipper, right? It's supposed to look like this. This is not me being terrible to my brushes. This is how it looks. So yes, it's different. I'm sure you could do a lot of the same techniques with a mop brush, but this one you can really smash onto your canvas or your pad, acrylic pad, and it will not change the shape. And that's what I love about it. A lot of my other brushes get really disfigured. I am a very heavy-handed painter, so this has really worked for me. But excellent, excellent question, for sure. All right, so I've got my darker shadow color here mixed. I mixed red, a little bit of black, and some white together. So we're kind of at a darker, almost like a cherry red, I would say, would be a good way to describe this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this into the darkest areas that I can see around this watermelon. Now, again, you can make this as red as you want. If you want this to be in like the peak of summer type watermelon, you are absolutely welcome to do whatever you prefer. But I'm just going in with these brush strokes. And I'm just kind of smashing and moving this brush around this watermelon slice. And you can see in some areas that it is much softer, and then some areas are much darker. So it definitely takes a bit to get used to these types of brushes, but well worth it in my opinion. How are we doing so far, everyone? Doing good? Feeling good? How's the camera? Is the camera okay?
Yeah, I think it's been behaving.
Okay, perfect. It's hard for me to see where I'm at, so thank you so much for letting me know. Please yell at me if it changes.
I will.
All right, and we're going to add this in. Again, I'm being very selective. I don't want to go too heavy-handed with this. This secondary layer is not to cover over our base. We want our base to shine through. We just want a little bit of this accent to start to shine through and not be overwhelming. If at any time as well, your palette paper starts to get a little bit dry, this paint is drying, you can actually catch the acrylic in the dry phase and add some water to it, and it'll kind of bring it back to life a little. It'll thin it down, so the paint won't be as thick, but it actually kind of reactivates it. And then I just usually bulk it up with a little bit more of a mixing light, or just kind of remix a little bit of the color, not the whole mass, if that makes sense.
Do you spray it or are you adding a little bit of water with your brush?
You can do either or. I know some artists prefer a spray bottle, whether they spray it right onto their canvas or if they spray it onto their palette. You're more than welcome to do that. Me personally, listen, I'm lazy. So I'm just going to throw my brush in some water and I'm just going to throw it on my palette paper and we're good to go. Cassie, don't stop. I'm like, I'm in my painting mode. I'm going. So whatever works best for you. My palette knife users and my misters are cringing right now, but it's okay.
Well, it seems like acrylic is just very accommodating.
It really is. The styles are endless. You know, you can have something very textured, you can have something very smooth. The possibilities are endless. And that's one of the reasons why, and we talk about it in the course, is that any style of painter, any experience level can use acrylic and have a great result with it. And although, yes, there are aspects like anything else that are frustrating, you know, we've got our color matching and the dry time. You know, if you're used to working with acrylic, you don't worry about dry time, except that sometimes it takes forever, right? Yes. You know, aside from that, you know, it's wonderful for all styles of artists. And that's what I love about it. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to keep adding in. I'm going to add in actually a little bit more black to my color mixture for my shadows here. And the more black we add, this red is going to get a lot deeper and a lot richer. So I'm going to be very selective of where I start to put these really deep, dark shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. Very selective, keeping in mind where these kind of soft, mushy bits are. Where the watermelon is very, very ripe, that's where I'm going to put these dark, dark shadows. And for the purpose of today too, it doesn't matter if your sketch is seen through. I mean, mine, you can definitely still see the outline. For the sake of a demonstration or a study or practice, it does not have to be perfect. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Hopefully you guys feel the same as well. Hopefully everything is kind of clicking and making sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I think that's pretty well for the shadow. So you can see here that we just have a little bit, not too much. I don't want it to be too rich or overwhelming, but just enough to start to build those layers. And I'm going to wipe off my brush using the side of the container, and I'm going to just dab it onto the paper towel. So always try to have a paper towel or like a face cloth or a tea towel by your side so you can wipe off any of the excess water and any of the excess pigment. Sometimes the water, we just don't have enough pressure to get rid of it all. So in a sort of standing water type situation, just use the paper towel after to get the little excess off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this for a moment. I'm going to let this dry. I am going to switch over to my small filbert and my round. So I'm going to show you guys these two brushes and how different they are, but can also achieve the same look with the rind of the watermelon. So with acrylic, we want to keep our productivity high. Because this dries quickly, I can move around this painting and be continuously painting without having to let it sit, walk away, and come back. So that's one of the perks. While this red area is drying, I'm going to skip down to this green area. It's dry, it's ready for me to paint, and I can just go ahead and get started. So we're going to work on the rind. I'm going to add in a lot of white to this. I'm going to start with my filbert, but I'm also going to show you that the round or pointed brush can do the exact same thing. Hi, Sitback. Good to see you, hon. Looks yummy. I know. We were saying that it's like summertime. Feels like summer in here. All right, so I'm grabbing some yellow and some blue, and I'm going to mix this rind color, but I'm going to have much more white in it this time. So I still want it to be on the minty green scale, but I'm going to add in some white to this. Now, white normally with acrylic does not dry very opaque. A lot of times you're going to need a couple layers to get this to look the way that you want it to. So be prepared for that. But hopefully with our base layer, we've done enough that it's going to show for you guys. You can see it, and then we can continue to add. All right, so let's go ahead. And I'm just going to pick some of these areas. I'm being very selective. I want some of that mint green to shine through underneath. And I'm just kind of dabbing my brush here. Very, very, I say haphazard, just kind of wherever I feel it needs to be. Whenever my brush gets a little bit sort of dull, the paint is, not really there, we can just dive right back into our palette paper and add some more. Now I'm going to split this in half and I'll show you on the other side the round brush. And that's half the battle, is really trying to find a brush that fits you, your style. And there's so many endless possibilities of which size and shape. So really it's a matter of experimenting. Do a little bit of blending at the bottom. Just add that in.
Cassie, throughout what you've been doing here, have you been like rinsing your brush or wiping it off or anything like that? Or are you just going right into the paint?
Yes. So normally what I'll do is before I mix a color or I kind of start a new one, I will go ahead and just dunk my brush into my water, even very quickly, and just kind of reactivate those brush bristles and get them to the correct shape. A lot of times when they dry, they'll kind of dry a little funny. So by kind of dunking it back into the water, it just resets everything. Like I find reset is a good word. Just kind of resets us a little bit. And then we can go ahead and just dive right back into our palette. But you don't have to. There are some artists who will just basically have a brush basically for everything, whether it's just every color and they don't wash them, or every system is different. But I definitely like to go in and water them for sure. Sounds like a plant. I water my brushes. I keep them happy. All right, so I think we're pretty well good for that side. I'm going to rinse my brush, kind of wash this off. Now it's important as well. Again, I always say this, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about brush care more in depth, but with your brushes, you never want to leave them in the standing water. So I know it's very difficult to see on my setup here, but I have my brushes on a paper towel laying flat, and then my water container just beside. And so that way they're kind of being soaked up as they dry, if that makes sense, against the paper towel, and they're not sitting in the standing water. If you let them sit, a lot of times these brushes will actually start to come apart. So that's where that ferrule pops off. The glue starts to wear away, the ferrule leaves from the wooden handle, and then you've got, a $10, $20 brush that's damaged. So I just like to keep them on the paper towel and out of the water, and that's where they stay. All right, so your knowledge is seriously insane. Thank you, Sitbag. Never in my life have I thought about or noticed how a brush dries. Yeah. I like to say that I nerd out about acrylic. I love it so much. But yes, it's all of those little things. And for me, I'm all about saving money. And so that was a little tip that my professor actually gave me in a totally unrelated course. I took graphic design, and they had a little side project where we actually used a bit of gouache for one of our assignments. And that's where I learned about brush care and washing and drying your brush. And my professor had told me he had brushes that were 30 years old that still looked brand new. And they were absolutely excellent. So just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys on the right-hand side the round brush and how it can do the exact same thing. Whatever you're looking for, it can do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead. And although there is a different brush stroke and shape and size, you can see here that I'm going to achieve the exact same look that I got on the other side, just in a different way. So I always say, use what you have. If you only have round brushes today, or if you sign up for the course and you only have a kit that has round brushes, by all means, use those. Don't let it stop you and kind of keep you from potentially finding a medium that you really like and enjoy and want to use. All right. So there is our right side. Seamless looks the exact same as the left. And now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to my small blender. So I have a little baby blender. You'll remember from the shadows with the large blender with the watermelon. Now I'm going to switch to the small blender. I'm going to dunk into my water. And I'm going to take, I can actually use this, the sort of minty light little green that I have left over. I'm going to add just a touch of red to this. And this is going to be our highlight on the watermelon slice. So again, I'm kind of switching gears, going back to the top part as it's dry, and I'm waiting now for the rind to dry. So you can see how, and if you've seen my videos before or caught my live streams, I'm always moving around my paintings, always. Productivity, time is money. So I am just keeping moving around my painting and just going for it. All right, so now that I have this sort of very light baby pink, I'm going to, and this kind of feels weird, but I'm going to dunk into my water. And I'm really going to have a very sort of wet watercolor type paint on the side of my palette. And I'm going to dab off the rest onto my paper towel. So you can see I kind of rolled it a little bit just to remove the excess. And this is going to be what we call a glaze. So a glaze is a very thin layer of acrylic. My watercolorist, you are going to get a kick out of this. It's essentially a very light translucent layer of watercolor, but with acrylic. I do have to say, there is this unwritten rule somehow that got circulated around the internet when the internet was born about acrylic, that you should not water down acrylic. If you do, you're a bad artist. That's against the rules. You have to use acrylic out of the tube. You can't use Mars Black. All of those are false. So glazing is an incredibly useful technique that requires you to water down your paint. This is not against the rules. It does not ruin your painting, and it does not change the properties of the paint. So do not worry about that at all. I thought it was true. I did not use glazing or watered down acrylic for years because of it, and I'm trying to change the narrative. It's not true. Let's water it down. So I've added in some water. If you find it's a little bit too wet, you can dab off on the paper towel. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in these really beautiful sort of juicy highlights on this watermelon. So you can see here, this is very, very watered down. And I'm just kind of going around and avoiding the areas that I shadowed. I don't want to cover over all of our hard work. But I'm just going to go ahead and add this in around the watermelon. And you're going to recognize this immediately as those really nice sort of veiny areas that they have. You're really going to see this pop off the page in a moment. For now, it's been looking a little dull, a little lifeless, a little flat, but we're going to bring it to life right now. What is the name of the amazing hot red? So this is a color that I mixed. However, it is from the Grumbacher Academy acrylic series. I'm using cadmium red medium hue. And from there, I just went ahead and did a little bit of mixing with some, actually just some white. So really, kudos to Grumbacher for making a sweet red paint that pretty much was that way out of the tube. I'm just going in and adding this in. You can see this kind of smoky effect. So with the glazing paired with the blender brush, listen, this is the secret, y'all. All right. When in doubt, blend it out. Okay. That's what I always say. Blender brushes have saved my art career. It sounds dramatic, but it's true. I have leveled up since learning how to blend and glaze at the same time with these brushes. My paintings exponentially, I was much more confident, and I felt the paintings looked much more smooth and realistic. So when in doubt, blend it out. That's what I always say. Use your blender brush, get a little crazy, whether it's you're painting a sky. Excellent cloud coverage with these blender brushes. Excellent, excellent tool to have in your kit. I mean, we're painting a watermelon and using a blender brush. Like, I never would have thought that in 2023 I would be doing this, right? And yet this technique and this brush works. It's fantastic. Perfect. So we're just going to go ahead. I think that's a really, really good base. I'm going to add in a little bit more white to this. I'm going to solidify this a little bit further. So I'm going to add in a little bit more paint, less watered down, and I'm going to really punch in these highlighted areas. Very, very light areas around this painting that I can find. Do we have any questions so far? Everyone doing okay? Anything that I can kind of address while we're doing this?
Let's see. There was a question, I gave my answer to it, but there was a question about how do you feel is the best way to dry the brushes?
Oh, a very good question. Very important as well. So I have, and unfortunately I don't have it in this studio downstairs, but I do have a brush drying rack. I actually ended up getting it from Michael's. It was pretty cheap, not too crazy. And I pretty much just water my brushes. I have a brush cleaner. You can use Dawn dish soap, whatever you prefer. Clean your brushes. I always give a little flick down to kind of get those brush points back to natural. And then from there, this brush rack actually allows you to dry the brushes brush down so that the water drips from this sort of metal ferrule area and the brush down and out. If you dry them like this, although this seems really nice because your brushes are up, you don't ruin the brush bristles, all of this water that doesn't escape from your, I just realized you can't see this, sorry. All the water that is stuck in here is going to roll down this ferrule and wear away the glue. And eventually this whole metal part is just going to pop off. It's going to break. So I always say laying them down flat is a good alternative if you don't have a brush rack. I always say that's a good alternative. Or if you can, I'm sure on Amazon or Michael's or wherever, there's a little brush drying rack that you can use to dry your brushes. Excellent question, for sure. Also, y'all, I love to chit chat. It's almost 1. I look at the clock and I'm like, already? Oh my gosh.
I haven't even looked at the clock because this has been so enjoyable.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
So no complaints on my end.
Y'all don't mind. We go a little half an hour over. We're having fun.
Fine. Well, actually, I do have a question.
Sure.
This has been something that Kathleen and I've been discussing recently.
Definitely.
So we noticed that some acrylics dry matte.
Yes.
And then others dry as if they've been glossed. Is that the nature of the paint or the way they're drying or the thickness or?
Excellent question. And this is all, I would say, user preferred. So there are some artists who are going to want matte and some are going to want gloss. I find personally, like, my paints will dry a little bit more on the glossy side. So taking pictures is a little harder. I've only used paints that dry a little bit glossier. I find if you move towards like an acrylic gouache or even some of the more professional branded paints, you can specifically ask for matte finish. Some of them you have an option to pick matte or gloss, but yes, they tend to dry differently. And I don't know if that's in the production of the paint, how heavy-handed you are with your paint quantities. So if you have a lot on the canvas, they might dry a little bit more. I think I did read in chat, I think it was Mr. Gesso, someone was saying that they don't use textured paintings because it catches the light and the glossiness. Yes. So all different. I would say it probably varies by brand as well, their formula. So just kind of experiment. I would say if you're new to acrylic and you're not sure where to start, you can either buy a kit. But the good thing about, let's say, a Hobby Lobby or Michael's, or, we have Michael's in Canada, so that's kind of where I started. I could buy a tube of paint off the shelf, just one, maybe for, maybe $10, and try it and see if you like the finish. And if you don't, you can try a different brand. I mean, there's Grumbacher, Winsor & Newton, Liquitex. Like, there are so many different brands and types of acrylic. It's hard to know what's going to work for you. So for me, I started with Winsor & Newton. And then I ended up actually falling in love with Grumbacher for the non-toxicness of it. Obviously, there's chemicals in every art material we use. We'll touch on brush safety and art safety in the class as well. But I found that the non-toxicness of Grumbacher was what I was drawn to. So that's why I switched. But yes, pick up a tube in the store, buy a cheap art kit, see how you feel, and then kind of make a kit from there. And you might find you pick a black from Grumbacher, but you like burnt sienna from Arteza, or all these other companies, and kind of make your own kit very similar to a watercolor pan set. You might kind of mix and match and have a little bit of everything. Excellent question. All right, let's finish these little highlights on our watermelon here. I'm going to add a little bit more. I don't want to add too much, but I'm going to go ahead and pick out some areas that are really quite light. So down by the rind, the white gets a little bit stronger. And we're just going to kind of blend this out. Yeah.
I answered this question in the chat, but just to confirm,
Sure.
You don't need to seal acrylic work, right? I mean, because it's already waterproof once it's dry.
Oh, very good question. I got to put my brush down for this one. This is a good one. Whoever asked that in chat, 12 out of 10. Excellent question. I'm great question. Okay. This kind of falls into the category of there are some myths, okay? And there's some misconceptions in the art industry of whether or not you need to varnish or not, or seal or not, however you want to call it. There are some artists who are totally pro varnish. There are some artists who are not. I personally, for the longest time, did not varnish any of my paintings. Now, the reason being was because in my household, we have people who live here who are very sensitive to smell. So the varnish was so overpowering. It was just off the shelf, like Michael's. I don't even remember the brand, but it was a spray fixative. Even when I put it outside and did it, I always say varnish outdoors, by the way, for art safety. Even fixating outside, I would bring the painting back in, even though it was completely dry, and this thing would stink. So for the longest time, I did not varnish. However, I did manage to find an outsource to a company who does all natural art products. So they actually make their own oil paints that are completely non-toxic. They have powder that you can make your own paints and things. They had a non-toxic, all-natural varnish, which back in the old days, the old masters, when they didn't have spray fixative or anything, this was the system that they used. It was more alcohol based with some fruit and like fermenting. I don't know their process, but it's completely safe. So no, the parabens, no phthalates. I mean, there's all kinds of, crud in there, right? And they're completely natural with very, very minimal smell. I can actually varnish in my studio with the window open and I'm completely worry-free. So I would say if you are concerned about the toxicity of it, and you maybe don't have the space or ventilation, or maybe you live in like a apartment or a condo, you don't have a backyard to spray in and it's very close to your home, you don't have to varnish. If you want to try the all natural materials, you can just do a quick Google search. A few companies will come up, but you don't have to. Now I like to, because a lot of people don't want to pay for a frame. We know the cost of framing now. Custom framing is beyond expensive. And so a lot of people just want to hang the artwork on the wall and let it be. And so I find that adding a varnish, it keeps the life of the painting a little bit longer. I mean, paintings are going to last 20, 30, 40, 50 years anyway, in proper conditions, regardless. But adding that varnish, if someone wanted to dust it with like a Swiffer or like a paper towel, you can, and you don't have to worry about those dust particles attaching to the paint and dulling it over time. This is a very long-winded answer.
No, that's great, because
Yes.
So it's basically, so is it like an option where you can, if you want to, give it a little bit more protection, or
Correct.
like some people in the chat are saying that they like doing a gloss over it because it does bring out the texture, it makes the colors pop or something like that. But if you're not going to be touching it much or whatever, it doesn't really matter?
Yes.
Or
Like
okay.
behind a frame, I would say it's a moot point. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Behind a frame, you've got glass or some sort of acrylic in front of it. It's no problem. I find it really comes into play when it's unframed. In high areas of humidity, I know a lot of
Oh,
people,
yeah.
like, yes, like, believe it or not, people keep paintings in bathrooms, y'all. It happens.
I
Listen,
do.
yeah, so if you buy a beautiful, let's say you have a turtle themed bathroom, you buy a turtle themed painting and you put it in your bathroom. Think of a hot shower, right?
Yeah.
Acrylic, hot shower, moisture. I mean, over time, this thing could get mold, like all that kind of stuff, right? So
They get
the varnish,
sticky.
yes, the varnish acts as a barrier. And again, we were talking about finishing earlier, about matte or gloss. You can actually change the look of your painting with a matte varnish to make this thing very, very matte, like a gouache style painting. Or if you want a high gloss, you really like that lustrous, very glossy look, you can do that too. So it's entirely your choice. I would say if you want your paintings to last longer, especially if it's a custom commission, someone's paying a lot of money for your
Mm.
custom artwork. That's a whole other subject and story of you want this piece to last. This is an investment for your customer. I would definitely say try to find one that fits you. Maybe non-toxic is the way to go. I love it. It takes it's in a pump bottle. I put mine in a little pump bottle. I've got a sponge brush and I just go over top of it and it really brings out those colors, the life of the painting. It's just really worked well for me. So totally up to you guys, but excellent question. Whoever wrote that in chat, thank you for bringing that up because a
Ooh.
lot of people are nervous about that. You finish your painting and you go, now what? Right?
Right.
Right? So yeah,
Would
definitely.
you share with us the name of that company that does the all natural?
Yes. Bear with me here. I'm going to do a quick Google. Want to get the name correct 1000%. I believe they're called Natural Earth Paint, but I want to confirm for you guys.
So I just said, I make string art in the tub, but it's not string, it's just hair.
We've all done wall
We've
art, right? We've all done it.
hair
Oh,
sculptures with
you're a
shampoo.
gem. You're a gem. Okay, so I found the company. Their name is, now I believe this is the US one. There is one for Canada as well. Yes, it is called naturalearthpaint.com. And they have a FAQ, they have an about us. I've ordered their varnish now for about 3-4 tubs worth, and
Wow.
they are fantastic. Roughly for the large tub of varnish, you're looking at so it's a 32-inch, almost like a quart of paint, from the like Home Depot. You're at about $50. But I mean, you don't need a lot. It's lasted me a good year or so, and good. Best thing about it is the non-toxicness. In the actual listing, they have technical data. So you can actually go in and see what the formula is made of. So a quick read just says grain alcohol, natural resin, oil, all natural ingredients, 100% natural and non-toxic spirit varnish, which is what sold me entirely. Knowing that breathing this in, I still wear gloves and all that jazz, but breathing this in, you're not worrying about all those harmful chemicals that we don't really think about when we're painting or doing art. So definitely take a look at that and let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for sure.
I love the idea that it doesn't stink for weeks.
Yes, yes. And it was
It's
the
so bad.
spray. Yes, it really is. And I would get headaches. My mom has a very
Yeah.
sensitive nose. And so I'm like, I would bring these down to the studio and she's like, oh God, please, please stop. So I had to really source out an alternative. And she actually stood beside me using the Natural Earth Paints product. And it didn't bother her at all. So if that's a good testimonial, I'm not sponsored, by the way. So this is just me giving you my 1000% honest opinion. It was fantastic. So definitely keep that in mind. It's called naturalearthpaints.com, is the varnish all natural company. And you will see that they also have other assets as well. So painting materials, mineral, what do you call it? I was going to say dust. Dust is not the right word. To make your own paints that are non-toxic, they have as well. So definitely something to consider.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I did see, Chris, I did see your brush question about the blender as well, and I was going to touch on that. These are ones with foam tips and ones with very short bristles. Yes, so the ones that I'm using here are the very short, sort of stubby bristles. These are going to be very coarse. This is the one that you're looking for. The sponge and foam tip ones I find are great for like face painting or doing some background work. Like the blender side, you want these kind of short, stubby, very thick ones to really mash your paint around and get the look that you're looking for. So the Princeton ones are the ones I use here with the blue handle. These have been the best ones so far that I've been able to find and have really changed the way that I paint. So hopefully you will find this helpful and you can add this to your art kit because it definitely has made a huge difference. All right, what we're going to do is I'm going to do some more painting, right? Finally, huh? And I'm going to add in a little bit of some detailing to this area down towards the bottom. So we all know that the watermelon has a little bit of these like veins. I call them little veins or kind of like little spider web looks. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in. Everything is now completely dry. I can wipe my hand over this. Everything is dry. So no worries there. And I can just go ahead and add in some of these textures. And I'm using this round brush. You can use a liner. You can use a round brush, something with a very fine tip. But I'm just going to go ahead and add these in very haphazardly. These lines can disconnect. They can be completely crooked. Whatever you prefer, I say go ahead and add that in. And we're just going to kind of sprout these out from the rind and just go ahead and add these in. And just by adding this little tiny amount, you can really start to see this piece come together. And if you find that they're a little too dark, you can always just water down your brush, or a little too white rather. You can just water down your brush and just add them in as a light glaze. Perfect. You can have some coming here out the side. How are we doing, everyone? Everyone doing all right? Any questions so far? Anything I can clarify?
So far, no questions.
Perfect. I take that as a good thing. We're on the right track. I'd be worried if everyone was like, what are you doing?
Right.
Why are you here? Good question. Perfect. Some up the sides. Now we have yet to add in the seeds. That's going to be our last step in this painting. So again, we want to keep in mind back to front, dark to light. So I'm on our light stage now. I've done all of our shadows. And now I'm on the light stage, adding in all of the details. Perfect. And again, we can kind of blend this out. You can use your filbert brush, your blender, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to work on getting this as a seamless blend. There we go. And you can already see that just in this light amount of the glaze sort of mist that we put on, the darker sort of cherry low lights, you can really start to see the depth start to emerge. Before now, it was a little flat. Even doing this for a few times and teaching acrylic, I always get worried, especially when I'm doing a live demo, that I'm like, this painting looks terrible. But we're rounding a corner here. We're starting to see it come to life. And at this stage, you should feel a little bit more comfortable on, your painting, where everything is located and how you feel about it. All right. Can you give us the Princeton line and number from the brush handle? Searching on Blender doesn't bring anything up on the Princeton site. So the only place that I was able to find the Blender brushes on, and I hope this is all right,
Yeah,
am I able to mention?
absolutely.
Okay, so on my YouTube channel, in the description box, I actually have listed the direct links to Blick art supplies and the brushes that I use in all of my paintings. So I know the blenders and the different sizes and shapes are listed there, as well as the Grumbacher Academy acrylic brushes. I have yet to really find them anywhere else. On Amazon, they're kind of hit and miss. I don't always have them on there. So by using Blick, I was able to get a direct link there. For transparency's sake, it is an affiliate link. So if you do click the link and buy something from Blick, I obviously will get a percentage back as one of their affiliates. I just have to be transparent about that. But you can always take the link and shop around with just copy and pasting that official name for the brush in other art sites. So Michael's, Jackson's Art, online on Amazon. You can do your shopping wherever you want. That's just the easiest place I can get you to go to find that link. So if you just search up Cassydraws on YouTube, my first video in the description will have that everything that I use ever from Blick or Amazon or wherever I shop and buy it from, it will be there. So that's the best way I can direct you to where the product is. But please do not feel like you have to buy it from Blick. You can just copy and paste that name and then search elsewhere where you shop. And then that way you have the official name for it.
Great.
Hopefully
Thank
that
you.
helps. Yeah, for sure. It's nowadays with the internet and links, it's like, oh, it's so hard to find a direct link to things. So
Right.
on Blick, they have, honestly, for these blenders, they have, I want to say last time I checked was 10 variations or so of different
Yeah.
sizes and shapes and all kinds of good stuff. So that's where I would tell you to go for sure.
We have one near me, and going there and looking at the brushes can be somewhat overwhelming.
Absolutely. Like there's buckets and, buckets of
Yeah.
different shapes and styles, and we will touch on that in the course of,
Yeah.
when do we use a filbert? When do we use a liner brush or the blenders? We were talking a lot about blenders today. There's so many different options and variations that it can be, like you're saying, very stressful, especially for someone who's very new to the medium.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So for sure. Putting product links in your channel. Of course, I want everyone to be able to follow along step by step with whatever I'm doing, whether it's on Etcher, YouTube, etc. It doesn't matter, live streams. I want you to feel comfortable, confident, and be able to follow along step by step and kind of omit that stressfulness. I had to do that when I first learned. And so I'm trying now to impart my advice and my knowledge and try to help you along the way. So I'm very, very happy to. No problem at all. All right, let's work on the rind. I know we're at about 1:15 here, so I don't want to take up all of your afternoon, people. But let's go ahead and do the bottom of the rind. We're going to drop in those seeds, and then I can show you. Hopefully, I have my marker down here. I do. Of how we can do an outline with another fun material with it within acrylic is the pump marker. So let's do the rind. I'm going to dunk into the yellow and the blue. And we're going to mix a darker green. So I'm going to dunk in. Now I don't want it to be too dark because this watermelon is very, very soft, but I want it to be darker than that minty color we had before. I'm going to add in some white. Ever you need your color to be lighter, we're going to add in white. And I'm using my round brush. You can use whatever you prefer, but you're going to want to have something with a nice point to it. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to just lightly put in a darker green stroke on the bottom of this watermelon because this position that it's in, you can see a little bit of the rind, but not a lot of it. So it's just going to be very, very subtle. And you can see already too, by just adding this nice little bit of an outline, it really does start to bring it together. I do also have it as well, Banta, for the supply section on my website. Yes. So I list all of my materials that I use. And I know Etcher is fantastic about putting those material lists out as well for the course or any class that you take. They're very, very diligent of having those materials listed as well. All right. And that's probably good for our watermelon rind. I think that's perfect. I don't want to add too much. Maybe we can add in a few little areas of darkness here, but nothing too crazy. Perfect. All right, and now is the fun part of our painting. I always find, the base layers can be a little stressful. That's kind of your foundation. I consider it to the foundation of a home. Those are your building blocks, and that is exactly what our base layers are for our paintings. And now is the fun part of putting in all of these fun little details and the little things in our painting that people are going to look at it and really notice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go crazy here, and I'm going to drop this right into my Mars Black, and I'm going to cover my entire brush with this paint. And I'm going to go ahead, and where I blocked in these seeds, I'm just going to put a cute little brush stroke just like that. I basically use the round brush, and I let the brush do the work for me, and just did a nice little soft dab onto this watermelon slice. And you can see here, hopefully you can see, I'm pressing the brush down, letting it fan out a little, and then just lifting it off. And that is as simple as these seeds are going to get. Nothing crazy. We're going to put a little highlight on there, but that's it, really. This nice, just sweet little brush stroke, nothing crazy.
There's a question in the chat saying,
Sure.
the real question, do you put salt on your watermelon?
Salt. Salt? Is that
Salt?
a thing?
Some people put salt on their watermelon, yeah.
Sit back and I go way back. So sit back. I knew that was you. I knew that was you before I even finished. I was like, okay. I have never, however, this summer I am going to try. You bet when watermelon is in season, I'm going to get one and I'm going to put salt on it just for you. And I will report back with my findings. I've never heard of that before.
It's kind of interesting. It almost turns it into a different kind of food, kind of like you can take rice and you can put salt and butter on it or sugar and butter on it, and it tastes like a completely different food.
Interesting. Okay, yes, I'm going to have to try this. I've never in my life. So listen, you learn something new every day, right? And there's always something to try. So consider it done. All right, this last section of our watermelon is we're going to be talking about acrylic pump markers. Now, we'll get into this further in the class as well, a lot more in depth. However, I did want to give you a little preview of what they can be used for. So a lot of artists, especially for highlighting or areas like whiskers or things like that, these work excellent as a fine point or a round tip. You have options. You can do whatever tip you prefer. But these were great for doing little areas like highlights and strokes around your painting, etc. So if I felt today that I wanted to add in a little bit more of a opaque white highlight, I can go ahead and use these markers. They are much more concentrated and much more opaque than I find the tubed acrylic. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to prime it. Now, hopefully this one is going to behave and is not dry, I'm hoping. I'm going to prime this marker. And hopefully you can see on my palette, I don't know if you can, but it's kind of expelled a little bit of paint, and this nib is now ready to go. It's all primed. And I can go ahead, and if I want to do, let's clean up the edges, actually. So if I wanted to go ahead and clean up the edges of my watermelon, remove some of this pencil if I want to, I can go ahead along the edges and tidy this up with solid white paint. These come in a variety of sizes and shapes, so I could, and colors. So I could have a, brown marker, an orange marker. A lot of artists will use these for typography, so any written elements in their paintings, cleaning up areas. It almost is like a whiteout that you can cover over. So I'm just going ahead and doing a little stroke around the entire watermelon here. Whiskers for my wildlife artists out there, I do a lot of work with these markers for whiskers and fine little hairs and things. They work wonderfully. So just something to keep in mind, that there are a lot of different formats for acrylic and a lot of different tools. If you find you get more control with the pen type format like this one, I definitely, say give it a go. It gives you a lot of control and just something new and fun to add to your kit. So I just, again, it's not a necessity, but something I wanted to share with you that can kind of change the way you paint and add in an extra element to your paintings.
Cassie, I was typing, so I might have missed it, but did you also mention using it for signatures?
Oh, excellent point. I did not. Excellent point. And it's funny that I use these to sign my paintings, so I'm surprised I didn't click as an example. But yes, excellent. You can use these to sign your paintings. So if you don't want to use a brush, I am a very messy writer when it comes to brush, like using my brush for it. I can't, like, you see Bob Ross at the end of his videos, like, no. Mine looks like a wayward branch in my paint.
Right.
Like, it does not look like anything at all. They'd be like, oh, who's this artist? Like, no clue. No clue. So these work for a great way of doing that. I use the fine point white usually to sign. And it's an excellent way of doing that. So thank you so much for mentioning that as well, and telling everybody about it, because it's a huge bonus for sure. All right. And there's the sort of tidied outline. Now I could go ahead and take an eraser and get these little pencil marks out of here. But for the sake of the demo today, we're just going to put a nice little stroke around this, tidy it up a little bit, and just add this in where we see fit. Oh, and let's put a little highlight on our seeds here, because they might reflect a little bit of light. So I'm going to use my small round brush, a little bit of white paint. Oops. Now, oh, good thing this happened. This is a learning experience. If you ever find that your brush has too much water and you've kind of pooped on the page like I have, you can take a napkin or a paper towel or whatever and just dab that off, throw that to the side. Make sure that your brush is really quite dry, and then we can start again and just put a little bit of a highlight on these seeds. And you're good to go. Prints and blenders aren't listed on your website under your painting supplies. Yeah, for sure. I will definitely show you the handle. So we have the Princeton Select Round Blender, and this is a size 12. Hopefully you can see this all right. And then we have this little barcode and brush info on the back. So hopefully you're able to see this. I can't really tell on my camera if it's visible, but it is under my YouTube video descriptions as well. Direct links to Blick for the official, the way it's written online. But that's the information there. So I'll just flip this over a couple times, and maybe a print screen or a quick camera pick will help you find these online, because they really are quite awesome. But yes, on my YouTube, in the channel description or the video description, I have a link to all of these to Blick, their art supply store, and they have a bunch of these available. They are affiliate links, but you can go ahead and copy the link and then search elsewhere, maybe a store closer to you or something more local. But hopefully this will help you out. All right, so I think that's pretty well it for the watermelon slice today. This is completely dried. We covered a lot today, so hopefully your heads aren't spinning too much. But yeah, I'm pretty well done with the painting. So I guess any further questions, let me know. I know we are doing a giveaway today, correct, as well? So whenever whenever we are feeling completed and everything is good, any further questions, let me know. I trust me, I'm happy to chit chat and answer them. And then if we gotta go, kick me off the air, because I might not leave.
we're good. We're
just,
good.
just boot me if we're like, Cassie, we're out of time, girl. See you later. But yeah, any questions?
And
Let me know.
Jean, I did just put the link. I found the Blick link to that brush, so I put that
Wonderful.
in the chat for anybody else who is looking for it, who might be struggling to find it. So that's there, and you should also be able to find any other sizes that they have there as well. Cassie, can we bring you back
Oh, yes, for sure.
so we can see your lovely face?
Excellent. Yep. Let me switch my cameras. Hopefully I can get this right.
There you are.
I'm in focus. Hopefully my cameras
Yes,
are going to be in trouble after after our stream today. Perfect. Okay. All right. Hi. Good to see you guys again.
And let's talk about your course a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, as you guys may have seen on Etcher's page and mine as well on socials, we are introducing our Introduction to Acrylic course. And essentially, it is a 7-week course. So, it's about 5 courses, really, or 5 classes. 4 are going to be step by step, very much so like we did today. And then the last class is going to be our what I call our catch up session. So, for feedback, I give homework. Yes, I would not be a proper teacher if I didn't give homework. So there's homework at the end of every lesson. And then, of course, we have our final exam, our final project. And at the feedback, we will go through all of those, do what we did today, ask any questions that you may have. And it's much more in depth than today was. So very much so. More so, I'll say like a one-on-one full classroom experience. So it's a lot of fun. We are going to start from the very beginning. So even further the beginning than what we did today. We're going to talk about brush strokes, color mixing, when to use your brush and where. We're going to do a bunch of different swatches. I've got a few challenges for you along the way, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So if you thought today was fun, the class is going to be even more fun. It's going to be funner. So I'm very excited. I can't wait. And I really do hope that acrylic becomes a passion of yours. I always am. I hope you can tell that I'm very passionate about what I do. And if you left feeling inspired today, then I've done my job, and I hope to do so even further in the course. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Excellent. And some stats about the class, in case you're wondering what to expect. It does start this Saturday, April 8th. It spans 7 weeks. It's like Cassie said, 4 actual classes, and then there's the feedback session at the end. There's also a private Facebook group. So you can post your homework there so Cassie can see it, give you some feedback. You can give each other feedback. Just let everybody know that it's welcome and keep it kind.
Yes.
And let's see what else. Am I missing anything? Oh, yes. So if you are a subscriber, the course is included with your subscription. If not, it's $80 for the whole session, for the whole course. But currently we are having a special if you want to bring a friend along with you. So it's $99 for 2 people. So, and that's only good up until Saturday. So if you have a friend who wants to join you, go ahead and get yourself signed up for a pretty big savings.
Absolutely.
Just checking out my notes here to see if there's anything else that I missed.
Me too. The course is awesome. That's on my notes. The course is awesome.
Yes. It's going to be a lot more like it was today. In case anybody is wondering, Cassie will be there live every week. So every class she will be there. The class actual content, the video will be pre-recorded just so there are no technical difficulties. And Cassie will be doing all of the actual instruction live. And that way we can pause the video, you can ask questions, she can answer them. And if you miss a class, it's not a big deal. In a few hours, the full class will be uploaded for you to watch, so you can rewatch it at any time that you'd like. Let's see, any other questions so far? Let's see. Here. Okay. So not related to the course itself, but here's a question.
Sure.
Cassie, have you used the Etcher watercolor pads for acrylic work? Do the high quality pages handle acrylic well for practice and whatnot?
So I personally have not with acrylic itself. I've used them separate, but I would imagine that the thickness and again, Etcher makes fantastic material. I would have no issues trying acrylic, even a very heavy gouache on those pages. I think you would be more than fine. Even something like this today probably did not need this thick illustration board. I probably could have gotten away with just a standard like cotton piece of paper, like no big deal. So I would definitely say try it. Obviously, do a spot test on your page before you do this beautiful sketch and try to paint it. Make sure you do a little spot test first, see if it buckles, how it handles. But I would have no concerns if it can handle, in which it does, a lot of water. I would have no issues. Acrylic, the most it's going to be is just heavy, just thick. Whereas with watercolor, you're using a very, very vast amount of water. So I would have no concerns there at all. Definitely.
Great. And there was a question earlier about finishing the paintings, because we talked about different varnishes and that kind of thing. Have you ever
Sure.
used a wax like Darlin's wax, or what is this called? The Gamblin wax or anything like that to seal them?
I personally have not, so I don't have any experience with that. Just the natural earth product, and then the spray fixative, which I will not name, from another company earlier. So I have no experience with them. I would say again, spot test, see how it works for you, and if that's your comfortability and what you want to use, I would say go for it. Honestly, it feels like there's a lot of rules in art, but there really aren't. So as long as the material, works for you, you're happy with it, comfortable, it's within your price budget, then I say go for it for sure.
My guess with the wax would be because acrylic is not a porous surface, that it might just sit on the surface where with like watercolor and even gouache, it absorbs. So the wax sinks into the paper. So I'm a little bit
Yes.
concerned that it might just be another coating that would get sticky and attract dust and stuff like that. But again, test it. It
Yes.
might work great.
Yes, use it on like an old painting that you're maybe not
Yeah.
too fussy on. Yeah, like if you've painted the Mona Lisa, don't do it, on that where you're like really proud of this. Try it on one that's maybe like, oh, it's like a throwaway anyway, or it was like today's demo where you're like, I'm not going to sell it or use it for anything. It was just for practice. Try it there first. But I think you're right where it might just get kind of sticky and tacky and then just stay there forever. So
Yeah.
I would probably say with the acrylic side, again, I'm not a watercolor expert, so I didn't even know the wax was a thing.
It's
So
amazing for
I
anyone who's
had no,
watching.
I had no idea. I'm a watercolor novice. I am learning from you guys, so I had no clue. I would stick with the varnishes and that sort of things for probably acrylic and oils
Yeah.
for sure.
In case anybody's wondering, the wax is fabulous for watercolor. It doesn't change the color of the watercolor like some varnishes make it darker or something. This does not. It's fantastic. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you don't even feel it when you touch it later. It's great. Anyway,
Awesome.
little
You
side
heard it
note
here. You heard it here.
there. So I'm not seeing any more questions right now. So why don't we go ahead and do our giveaway?
Perfect. Sounds good to me.
So before anybody does anything, please listen to the rules. And so that way everything is fair and easy. So what we are giving away is an Etcher sketchbook, and it's one of our everyday sketchbooks. You get to pick the orientation and whether it's hot pressed or cold pressed. The winner will just email us and let us know their choice, and we'll send it out to you. So this is how we're doing the giveaway. Again, don't do anything. Hands off the keyboards right now.
Away from the keyboards.
Away from the keyboards. So you get one entry, one, not 10, not 20, one. And you're going to put in one number between 1 and 50. And you're going to do so after I type the word go. So when you see go, go ahead and put in your entries. You've got 10 seconds to do that. And then after I type stop, then nothing after that is going to count. So get your number ready in your head, get ready to type. And the number is written on this little piece of paper. And I'm going to get ready. So 1 second and go. And I've typed stop. Okay.
All right.
So the closest number is going to be the winner. And 17. So let's see who had the closest number here. Let's see. 18.
B.
Yay. Okay. So I am not sure I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Boasian? Is that right?
I just call her B. It's been
B.
years and I
Okay,
get it
B.
wrong.
B, you are the winner. So please do contact us. I'm going to put the email address into the chat. It's hello@etcherlab.com. So it's our lab, not our studio. So I'm going to put that in there. Just let them know that you're the winner. I will let them know as well so they know to expect it. And we will send you your lovely sketchbook. So let me go ahead and put that into the chat right now. hello@etcherlab.com. And congratulations, B.
Congrats, B.
And one more time, I'm going to put into the chat the link to the course. It starts this Saturday. Just look at how much we learned today. I learned a lot today too.
I'm
So
glad.
imagine how much you're going to learn during these classes. And also, we would love to know what you thought of today's class. So I'm going to put into the chat our feedback survey. That way we can keep bringing you content that you will enjoy. Let us know how we did. All right. So I am not seeing any more questions. However, if you do have any more questions, please feel free to email us at hello@etcherstudio.com, or you can ask on our private Facebook group. I'm sure you can message Cassy as well through her Instagram. Let me go ahead and flash your Instagram on here for anyone who hasn't seen it before.
Sure.
And we can see all her beautiful work
Yeah,
too.
perfect. Thank you.
All right. So I think that's it for us today. Cassy, any last thoughts before we go?
Really, just thank you so much for having me. To each and every one of you who visited us today, I really appreciate it. And I hope you learned something. And even if you've already known everything that I showed here today, if you left feeling inspired or you just had a good time, to me, then I did my job today. So I'm so glad to have you. I look forward to seeing you guys hopefully on the course on Saturday. Please let me know your thoughts on anything that I do, whether it's, send me an email, a message, whatever. I'm always looking to grow as a teacher and as a person. So I appreciate it and just thank you so much.
Great. And I just want to throw this in there too. Although we are showing this as a beginner course, like just from very beginning, it's not just for beginners. I mean, I've worked with acrylic before. I actually learned a lot today, and it's sometimes nice to go back to the basics, and there's always something new that you pick up or something that you forgot. We start getting into something that we've done for a long time, and we just start losing those
Yes,
little things, and just being reminded of them can be so incredibly helpful along our journey as artists. So
absolutely.
yeah, please do check out the course page. And again, any questions that you have, please feel welcome to ask. And we really look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And until we see you next time, everybody, make more art. Bye.
Bye.